Big show today. Secretary of State Rubio is coming along a little bit later. Going to have Charles C.W. Cook, Christine Rosen, many people. But I'm pleased to welcome to the program this morning Leo Terrell. He is senior counsel to Attorney General Pam Bondi in the Civil Rights Division. And Leo may not remember this, but he was my guest on the Old Life and Times show that I hosted for 10 years in L.A. from 1992 to 2002. Because Leo and I have been doing this a while. He's also a very expert broadcaster, a superb lawyer. He's a young man. He's a year younger than I am, so he's a young man. But I'm so glad to see you at the Civil Rights Division, Leo. Welcome. How are you?
Hugh, I remember that. Was that on KCET back in Los
You bet.
Angeles?
Life and Times.
You better believe it. It was a great program. And to answer your question, I am extremely happy. I am very happy that President Trump appointed me to this position. I'm very happy to work with Pam Bondi. This is something that, as a civil rights attorney for 30 years, it is a privilege to serve this country, and I'm glad to be on your show.
You know, Leo, we got about a law school about the same time, and I did a clerkship, and then I went over to DOJ, working as a special assistant for Ed Meese and Bill Smith. And now it's been 40 years, and I'm in radio, and you're back at DOJ, so things turn around. You know, things change. But you did a great thing last week. You cut off $400 million to the Columbia University in order to stop their continued non-protection of Jewish students on their campus pursuant to Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Do I have that right?
Yes, you're 100% correct. Title VI is the mechanism to defund Columbia of $400 million.
So what did you actually do? Let's walk out and be a little bit lawyery with me. Did you send them a notice letter? Did you send a letter to everyone in the federal government saying no more money for Columbia? How did it actually roll out?
Well, it's important that your viewers and listeners understand what I am doing. I am part of a task force to combat anti-Semitism. President Trump, Hugh, issued an executive order. He wants to eradicate anti-Semitism in this country. If you recall, the last administration turned their backs on the Jewish American community, turned their backs on Jewish students. So President Trump gave Pam Bondi and the DOJ a directive: eradicate anti-Semitism throughout the country and at the schools, at Columbia, at Harvard, NYU, at UCLA, where I went to law school at. And so we created a task force. And part of that task force responsibility was to go after these anti-Semitic universities that receive federal funding. President Trump, Pam Bondi, will not have taxpayers' dollars subsidize anti-Semitic behavior. So that's what we're doing. We're going to take the money away.
I think this is great. My alma maters are Harvard undergrad and Michigan Law School. And you can go after them second and third. Cut them off well, because they have not protected their Jewish students either. UCLA is an absolute disgrace. It's all over this country. Anti-Semitism has exploded. I'm just wondering how you do it. I mean, it's just a practical lawyering matter. I practice law. I'm not retired, but I'm not taking any more clients. I just don't know. Do you send them a letter? Or do you just cut the checks off? What do you do?
Well, you first of all give them notice, because remember, Hugh, they have an obligation under Title VI to provide education opportunities and not to discriminate against protected class status, religion, color, ethnicity. And they basically were receiving taxpayers' dollars illegally because they were not protecting Jewish American citizens. And so what we did was we basically gave them notice and we stopped providing the funding. And I'll get news for you. To Harvard, to NYU, to Michigan, same thing's happening to them. It's going to happen because we're going to look at the numbers of federal dollars, and Hugh, it totals in the hundreds of millions of dollars, and we're going after them. And
you're doing the Lord's work. That Civil Rights Act of 1964 is very explicit that you may not discriminate against students based upon their ethnicity or race, and Jews are both an ethnicity and a race, and they've been discriminated against. So they shouldn't get any federal money. I just want to know the evidentiary basis that you're going to use going forward. If you're sitting out, let's say the Ohio State University, the national football champions, they had some anti-Semitism last year. They brought the hammer down on it and they stopped it. Are they going to get a letter? I mean, what do they have to worry about? How far back are you looking? Are you just looking about right now?
Well, no, we're looking back at the number of years that the statute of limitation allows us, not only under Title VI, Hugh, but Title VII as well. Title VII protects the employer-employee relationship. There are Jewish professors, Jewish student workers. So what we have is to follow the statute of limitation on both not only Title VI, but Title VII. And it applies to all these universities that not only receive federal funds, but have to follow the Civil Rights Act regarding the employer-employee relationship. They can't discriminate based on, again, protected class status, race,
Have you got
religion,
a stack
ethnicity.
of complaints from professors who feel that they've been discriminated against on the... Good, investigate them all. The guy whose picture is up here, Ronald Reagan. When I was at Justice Department, his division of civil rights was run by William Bradford Reynolds. His deputy was Chuck Cooper. They were the brass-knuckled enforcers. They were really good lawyers. Civil Rights Division went way left, Leo. Did you find? Is anyone on the task force with you? Have you got anyone else to work with there? Because they went way to the left.
You are 100% correct. The Civil Rights Division, when the Trump team came in, way, let me say it again, way left. Pam Bondi, President Trump, has made a determination very simply. Everyone's going to be treated fairly. If you're far left, you're not going to be part of this DOJ team that's going to eradicate not only anti-Semitism, the Trump and Bondi administration just wants a level playing field. No one's treated preferentially better than others. Everyone's treated equally. The Jewish community has been treated unfairly. And I have to say this, Hugh, it's not only the universities. Look at these blue cities that have turned their backs on the Jewish community in New York, in Chicago, in LA. Where are the hate crime charges? Pam Bondi and President Trump have given us a directive to stop it, and those cities are going to lose their funding as well.
So you need prosecutors because you can prosecute people. It's a crime to violate people's civil rights. It's not only a federal forfeiture of funds, it's a crime. Are you going to have enough lawyers to work with? I mean, is there anyone in the Civil Rights Division left? Because they were all wokesters, and when you came in, you knew they were all wokesters. Have they left?
Well, I'll tell you right now, as you know, there are procedures and safeguards for employees who have been here for a while. We're working through them. But I'll tell you right now, Pam Bondi has made it a directive. Get the work done. Work through these people. We're hiring people because we have an obligation to make sure Jewish Americans can be treated fairly at the universities. And I take that order to heart. And that's why we're complying with not only Pam Bondi's directive, but President Trump's executive order. We're obligated to do it, Hugh, and we're doing it. And not only are we going to these 10 schools, just as a method, as our first step, we're going to these 4 cities, LA, Boston, Chicago, Los Angeles, and talk to their mayors, talk to their district attorneys, do the job of prosecuting hate crimes, or the U.S. Attorney's Office, the DOJ's office will do it for them.
So going back to nuts and bolts, Leo, you're a real lawyer, as opposed to a lot of people who play one on TV. You're a real lawyer. You know Columbia is going to come at you and try and get their money back. Have they done that yet? Have they filed an attempt to enjoin your enforcement action against their federal funding?
Let me answer that. No, they haven't, but they're trying to change their ways, but it's not good enough. They're talking about making changes. Not good enough. We haven't seen the evidence. We have not seen any type of evidence. There's been communications, Hugh. I can only go that far and disclose, but what they have done is not enough. And the motivation, Hugh, is wrong. They're only talking to us now because we took away their money. The issue is not the money. The issue is treating Jewish American students fairly.
You remember, Leo, whenever we had findings of discrimination that were systemic in a school district, for example, the federal judge involved would take over the school district. I'd like to see the Department of Justice get a consent decree where Columbia gets a new law school dean, they get a new president, a new board, a new Department of History, new set of reasonable time, place, and manner regulations for speech on campus that ban masks. I'd like to see monetary payment to students whose lives were disrupted for the last 2 years because they paid a lot of. They want to pay $75,000 to go to Columbia and they couldn't go to class. I really want you to bring the hammer down. Is that your intention? Wait 1 minute. Wait 1 minute. I'm going to come back, ask him for his intention. Stand by, Leo. I got to go to a break. Don't go anywhere, America. Got a lot ahead coming today. Secretary of State Rubio is coming up in hour number 2. We've got Mary Katherine Ham coming up. I got a lot to do with you today. And Israel has re-entered the Gaza Strip with ground troops. As we speak, breaking news. I'll bring you breaking news as well. More Leo Terrell coming up right after the break. I wonder if he's got a target list. If we can get Leo Terrell's target list among the universities. Leo Terrell, who is the senior counsel at the Division of Civil Rights at the Department of Justice. Leo, we went to break. I asked you. I really, really want you to bring the hammer down on the bad actors out there on the college campuses against Jewish Americans. Is that your intention? I really want you to bring the hammer down. Is that your intention?
Yes. Let me think about that. Yes, yes, and yes. And I'll tell you right now, Hugh, we have an investigation going on against the UC region in California. And I'll tell you right now, injunctive relief, pattern and practice is on the table. So we're using every tool in the toolbox. I've been a civil rights attorney for 30 years. I know how to go after these guys. And I'm telling you, I cannot thank Pam Bondi and President Trump enough. They have told me to go after them. You talk about a hammer, I'm talking about a hammer, a cannon, grenades. We're going after these schools, and we're going to deter this conduct and make sure it never occurs again. What happened?
Give me a couple of bits of information. You need some nails. You are the hammer, but you need some nails. You need some young lawyers. You need some special assistants. You need Todd Blanche to return your phone call, the Deputy Attorney General. You need some special assistants on the 5th floor. Is there a chain of command, or have they just sent you out there on the good ship, Leo Terrell, to go off and right wrongs? Or are they backing you up? Are they checking in every day and making sure you're getting what you need?
I want everyone to hear this. I am blessed to have Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche. They have given me a directive and given me the resources I need. They have never said no when it comes to eradicating anti-Semitism. And I'll tell you right now, Hugh, the Trump administration and the DOJ were on the same channel. Everyone's working together. We have the right management team in place with Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche.
Okay, last couple of questions, Leo. You started with Columbia. Who's the next target? I want it to be Harvard. I want it to be Michigan. I want it to be UCLA, but I don't get to pick the targets. I'm a talking head. You're the lawyer. Who's the next target?
I'm going to give you a little breaking news. It's one of those 3 schools. I can't disclose it right now because I'll get in trouble. But one of those 3 schools, I just gave you some breaking news.
All right, give me a little of that. How much money's involved?
Come
on, Leo.
You're asking for too much. I'll take you out to dinner. And talk. And
is it bigger than Columbia? Is it bigger than Columbia?
President Trump and Pam Bondi are watching. They're my bosses. I can't breach my relationship with my bosses.
I get it,
right
Leo.
now,
God, it is good to see you on the side of the Angels, and it's great to know that the Civil Rights Division's got a new Brad Reynolds and a new Chuck Cooper. God bless you. By the way, who is the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights? Have we got one nominated yet?
Well, yes, we have one. She is Harmeet Dillon. She's going to be a tsunami in here. She's going to be great. Can't wait for her to get here.
Yeah, this is like the old days. I'm so happy you're there, Leo. Keep coming back. Keep talking to me. It's great to have someone who knows what they're doing on the side of the Angels. Leo Terrell, special advisor in the Division of Civil Rights, Department of Justice. Thank you for joining me on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
God bless you, Hugh. God bless America.
That makes me happy. We're bringing the hammer. I'm bringing the relief factor. I'm feeling better. We're on day 14 of antibiotics, and the coughing has declined a little bit. I got through class yesterday, but I still haven't gone up the implacable hill. Fetching Mrs. Hewitt I've been out in the sun. I feel like a vampire. I haven't been out in the sun in 3 weeks, and just been sick. But I'm getting better, and I keep taking my relief factor every day. I'm in a relief factor studio. And eventually that beast, I got to go up that beast, probably Friday, maybe Friday. I don't want to do this too soon because I do not want to go backwards again. That was the sickest I have been in 25 years. I canceled class. I've never canceled class in 25 years. I took a sick day from the radio. I take vacation days, but I think it's the first sick day I've taken in 25 years. That's how sick I was. So I'm glad to be better. It's got nothing to do with the relief factor. Relief factor is about making sure when I go up the implacable hill, I won't get minor aches and pains as a result of exercising again after a 3-week layoff. And we all have layoffs. That happens, and that's fine. Relief factor, I keep taking my relief factor. You should too. Call 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief. Get the starter pack, 3-week supply, $19.95, less than $1 a day. Stop masking your pain. Get rid of it by the anti-inflammatory that is relief factor. Now, let me play you a little bit of President Trump last night on his call with Putin, talking to Laura Ingraham, cut number 10.
We got a readout of your call with Vladimir Putin, and it was a fairly optimistic take. Vladimir Putin agreed to a ceasefire immediately on energy and infrastructure,
right,
but not to a 30-day ceasefire. Tell us what happened.
Well, you have a situation. We have a lot of guns pointing at each other foolishly, because it would have never happened if I were president. That was not a war that was supposed to happen. And it did happen. So that's where we are. And right now, you have a lot of guns pointing at each other. And a ceasefire without going a little bit further would have been tough. Russia has the advantage, as you know. They have encircled about 2,500 soldiers. They're nicely encircled, and that's not good. And we want to get it over with. Look, we're doing this. There are no Americans involved. There could be if you end up in World War III over this, which is so ridiculous. But, you know, strange things happen. And I think we had a great call. It lasted almost 2 hours. Talked about a lot of things and toward getting it to peace. And we talked about other things also.
I'm glad that he talks to dictators, because better to jaw than war, to quote Churchill. He also had a few choice words for judges, cut number 7.
What would you say to that? Are there circumstances where you would defy a court order?
Well, I think that, number one, nobody's been through more courts than I have. I think nobody knows the courts any better than I have. I would say the chief judge does, but nobody knows them better than I have. And what they've done to me, I've had the worst judges. I've had crooked judges. I have judges that valued Mar-a-Lago at $18 million because that benefited his case, because he wanted to see me convicted of something. I have judges that had relatives making millions and millions of dollars on the election, ruling on the election.
But going forward,
I had judges
would
that
you
were
defy
so
a court
corrupt.
order? Because that we all know that was outrageous.
I never did defy a court order.
And you wouldn't in the future.
No, you can't do that. However, we have bad judges. We have very bad judges.
This is the point.
These are
this
judges.
is what I'm telling you. It's what the chief judge. He's not going to defy court order. He's not going to do that. We don't have a constitutional crisis. I do want the Supreme Court to pick up the pace a little bit, but the Chief Justice was right to rebuke the members of the House talking about impeachment. We don't want impeachment with judges making stupid decisions. We want to rebuke them. We want to appeal them. We want to win. And I want you to help me with Feed the Children of El Salvador. Food for the Poor every Lent. I run a campaign. I've been sick for 2 weeks, so Mike Gallagher's ahead of me. And he's got a good audience, but I got a better audience. My audience is more generous and cares more. I don't know. Mike's got a good audience, too. But I got a great banner at the top of HughHewitt.com. Says, Feed Their Future. For $100, you can feed a child in El Salvador for an entire year. You know, we sent the deportees to El Salvador because we get along very well with their new president, who has restored order in that country. And he's helping us. Now let's help him. All right, he's taking our bad guys, he's putting them in jail down there. Let's help him. Text my name, Hewitt, Hewitt, to 51555, or go to the banner at the top of HughHewitt.com, Feed Their Future, or do it the old-fashioned way. Call 855-359-4673. 855-359-4673. I'm $50,000 behind Mike Gallagher. This is terrible. Somebody write a $50,000 check and have me catch up to Mike. It wasn't fair. I got a 3-week head start. We got to feed the people in El Salvador. We got to do it today. Thank you. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell gave remarks today in which he predicted that growth is going to be about 1.7% for fiscal year 25, and that inflation is going to be at 2.7%. Markets have reacted the way they're still open. So this market report is brought to you by AmericanFederal.com, one of our sponsors who sells and buys gold. Nick Grovich and a team at American Federal, the people you want to deal with whenever you're dealing with buying and selling precious metals. Straight up, honest as the day is long, very transparent. Oh, this is what gold costs today. Here's the commission. How much do you want to buy? What do you want to buy? What do you want to sell me again? Yeah, I'm going to have to look at that first. I'm going to have to weigh it and assay it. And very fair, very transparent, pretty quick. All you have to do is call them at 800-221-7694, no matter where you are in the country, 800-221-7694, or you can go to their website, AmericanFederal.com. So today at this hour, and we still got an hour, 30 minutes on the market, the Dow's up 1%, the S&P's up 1.21%, and the NASDAQ's up 1.51%. But gold has gone up to $3,052 an ounce today. $3,052 an ounce. And when Nick told me what he thought was going to happen, he thought it was going to sort of churn around 3,000 for a while. Maybe it will. He doesn't. He's not a prophet or a son of a prophet. He just believes there's a gold bull market coming. I have no predictions. I just continue to advise everyone to be diverse, own some dirt, own some precious metals, own some stocks, own some bond, keep some cash, invest in a producer if you can afford it. We've never been able to afford a producer here at the Hugh Hewitt Show, so we have Dwayne. But in the meantime, AmericanFederal.com will sell you the gold. They'll sell you the silver. Call them at 800-221-7694. I want to go back to the president talking with, actually, I want to go to Michael Waltz, National Security Advisor, was on Fox and Friends this morning talking about the deportations of the gang members and terrorists to El Salvador over the weekend. Cut number 414.
No, that's
Michael
right.
Waltz.
And Lawrence, let's go back in time a bit. I can remember when people were trying to arrest Osama bin Laden and were trying to arrest Al-Qaeda and, debating whether they had the evidentiary standards to get them through due process here in the United States, which is a very high bar. We need to perhaps start thinking about these terrorists like what they are, which is terrorists. Unfortunately, we had 9/11 to begin thinking about Al-Qaeda like the terrorists that they are. Tren de Aragua has been labeled a terrorist organization. They are no different than ISIS. They maim, kill, torture, create mayhem and chaos on our streets in the United States. And I think if you had some of those, tattooed, shaved head men labeled ISIS, then we wouldn't even be having this debate. So this is about a wholesale shift on what a terrorist is and how they should be treated in the United States, how they should be treated when they're attacking our soil and when they're violating our sovereignty and when they're terrorizing our citizens. And of course, that is going to present an Article 2, Article 3 in the Constitution conflict. But really, that's what this is. And this is squarely under the commander-in-chief's authority to keep Americans safe. And I'm telling you, that's how most Americans see it.
He's right, by the way. It is a non-justiciable political question as a matter of constitutional law. I had a law student yesterday say, how do we know that they're terrorists? How do we know? And I said, well, look, A, we got a pretty good read on these guys by their tattoos. And B, they're not American citizens, so I'm not really worried. But C, it's up to the president. Someone's got to decide. Not up to a district court judge in D.C. Now, I'm against all the impeachment talk. My friend Mark Levin was mad at me this morning, said I'm protecting the ruling class because I agree with the Chief Justice. The Republicans in the House should just pipe down on impeachment. We don't need it. We do not need to impeach federal judges. They're going to be wrong. Even the great Justice Scalia was wrong in Employment Division versus Smith, the worst decision of my lifetime. And I don't want to impeach Justice Scalia because he's wrong about something. I'm with the president on this stuff. Let's just get them out of the country, and it's not up to a district court judge. Now, what should that judge do? Well, you got to learn the first rule of holes. He's just digging deeper, and he's not going to tell the president of the United States to bring him back, and he's going to get ignored if he does. He should dismiss the case as a non-justiciable political question that is moot. And if the ACLU wants to argue that it is a wrong capable of repetition yet evading review, they can appeal the dismissal to the D.C. Circuit. And the D.C. Circuit, at least, they're punching at sort of their weight to the second most important court in the United States. And then if they get involved, the Supreme Court ought to do what they did in Nixon v. U.S. and just take the case and decide it. And I think the president will be upheld because it's Zone 1, as Justice Jackson laid out in the Youngstown steel seizure cases. So that's a lot of con law. My long way of saying we don't need the impeachment nonsense. Don't go off the deep end. Let's just win the cases and get rid of the bad guys and stay focused on winning. Always happy to welcome Mary Katherine Ham, America's happiest podcaster, host of Getting Hammered, along with your morning show for any time of the day, along with co-host Vic Mattis. Mary Katherine, I got a bunch of things to cover with you. I want to begin with the talk of impeachment. I woke up this morning, and my old friend Mark Levin, who I've literally known for 40 years, is mad at me for protecting the ruling class because I agree with the Chief Justice of the United States that we shouldn't be talking about impeaching federal judges because they're boneheads. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think mere disagreement is not a reason. And I also am sympathetic to people who go, wow, the ruling's coming down fast and hard, basically saying that the executive does not have the power to do anything, are frustrating. And the appeals process that you would remedy that by is very frustrating as well. These wheels can move a little slow, and it does feel like often it's tilted in the direction of like, hey, you can do all the liberal things, but you can't do all the limiting things that a conservative executive or someone who might like to limit the government can do. And so that feels wrong to people who voted for Donald Trump for this reason. But I'm with you that I'm very wary about how you use impeachment and for what reasons. Because I want to believe
this poor judge is way out over his skis. This poor guy is way out over his skis. He's a district court judge. He's a, quote, chief judge of D.C., which means he gets to make some assignments and panels, but it doesn't make him more important than the other district court judges. So he's punching up against the President of the United States and the Attorney General. He's going to lose. He ought to dismiss this as a non-justiciable political question and punt. Do you think he'll punt, or do you think he's going to try and tell the president to bring the deportee back to the United States?
Well, see, now he seems mad, which I think is the cost of seeming like you're defying his order, which there's been some argument about that, but it ticked off the judge, and I know a ticked off judge isn't one that I want to deal with. So I would probably guess that he continues forward fighting with them when maybe the better option would be to say, let's kick this up to a higher court.
Yeah, Mary Catherine, you're a normal person, a normie we call you. I think the judge is embarrassed because he was lazy and high-handed on Friday night, did not write down the order, and assumed that people were going to read his mind and treat him like a federal judge, because when they go to heaven, they think they sit on the bench with God. That's what I think. Right. And therefore, an angry, embarrassed, lazy judge is likely to strike out. But what's your advice to people who are embarrassed, lazy, and angry in every other situation?
You would say, oops, I goofed that up, and try to remedy it some other way than continuing to fight.
That is. Now, I got a mom question for you. I don't know if you've seen this story. 13-year-old girl, middle of the country, does not want to change into her gym clothes in front of a 13-year-old trans girl, boy identifying as a girl. And so she goes home and gets upset, and her mom goes to the school board. Turns out it happens again, and then the gym teacher, the assistant principal, and the principal make her change clothes in front of this trans girl. I think this is not a good issue for these teachers and principals. What do you think?
No, when I read this, I double checked it like 3 times because I thought,
I'm glad.
This can't be correct. No, I read it many times because I wanted to make sure that it was correct because it sounded so insane. 3 or 4 grown women are policing the possible protest by these young ladies of saying, we simply don't want to change in front of this person. We'd like to not do that, right? And by the way, protest for the left is A-okay as long as you're burning Teslas, including ones that belong to private owners. But if you want to just say, no, I'm drawing my line in the sand and I don't want to change in front of a boy in my middle school bathroom, that's the one where they'll gang up on you. The idea that these women were standing there watching to make sure that this young woman changed in front of someone she didn't want to, that's the abuse. That's the abuse.
It's actually kidnapping. I think it's actually a tort. I think they can be fired. Although if I'd been their lawyer, I would have told the little girl, identify for the moment as a gender fluid individual who wants to use the unisex bathroom to change. But I really do think that is kidnapping. It's confinement of someone in a space they don't want to be. And they wanted her to change gym class. So you did check it out. That really did happen. Those people were that stupid.
She asked for a change in gym class, and they said no to that too, because the fealty to this other person's feelings and this ideology is absolutely the most important thing to them. They haven't gotten the memo on the vibe shift, and they are so used to bullying people that they are comfortable bullying a 13-year-old girl into changing her clothes in front of a middle school boy. This is absolutely crazy. I don't know how you would talk in front of a school board and not lose your mind. And her mother did a great job of not losing her mind and being very clear. But
Grandpa would have lost his mind. Now, the next question is, Why isn't this on the lead of every? I saw it. I watched it 2 or 3 times. I watched the testimony. I saw the trans activist mother of the trans boy stand up and talk. It's very dramatic. It's incredibly. I mean, it will draw numbers. The only place I've seen it is on X. Why is that, Mary Katherine Ham?
Because that's where normal people get normal news now. I mean, look, I do think that X is still not real life in the same way that Twitter was not real life. But where our fragmented media means that people see stories that matter to them, regardless of whether ABC covers them. And that's where people are seeing that. And I would argue, like, the splashdown, which should have been a great American communal moment where we were all glued to our televisions watching that in the way that we would have in the 80s or 90s, but that became an X event. People were watching that online, and that's where they get things that matter to them, whether it's this horrific thing that happened to this young woman where people will find out about it, even if NBC doesn't tell them, or whether it's the splashdown that we all wanted to celebrate, watching those astronauts come safe home from space.
What do you think's going to happen with the 13-year-old? I have a prediction, but what do you think's going to happen?
I mean, I don't know what I would. First of all, I'm so proud of her. It's brave to stand up, even at this point, even when we've gotten a little bit more support for women like this. I actually met Peyton, the young woman who was at the State of the Union last night at the Fox Green Room, and thanked her for her work and said, I know you didn't ask to be in the spotlight, and I know it's not maybe your natural place, but you're doing a great job, and I know you get a lot of hateful comments because of it, but what you're doing matters to other young women. So what I would do if I were the mom, I don't think I'd let her go to the school anymore. Like
I would sue them for a violation of my civil rights under Section 1983 action, because those are state actors, the principal and they are acting on behalf of the government, and they are violating the civil rights of that 13-year-old, and I would hold them individually liable, and I would bring that suit today. And if I were the school district, I'd put those 3 people on leave because they're a menace to your school district. Mary Katherine, because I've been sick, I haven't been listening. Are you a March Madness person?
I used to be more of one. Before I was a mom, I was a huge basketball fan, but there are too many games per week. So now
I'm with you. The reason I like March Madness is it means the Masters is coming up. Now, I have a deal, and my marriage has lasted almost 45 years, so it's worked, which is I'm left alone on the weekend of the Masters. Have you established that deal with Steve yet? Does he have any no-go zones?
I prefer golf. I like watching golf more than Steve does. The Masters was always a tradition in my household because my dad grew up in Augusta, and so it was always on the TV.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I'm a weirdo who doesn't golf but likes to watch golf. I don't know.
Yesterday morning, I wanted to tell you. Yesterday morning, I went to an interview. I don't go to interviews. I do interviews, and if someone's conducting an interview, I typically don't go. But Jack Nicklaus was being interviewed by my friend Hank Adler. Isn't it wonderful when someone who is the greatest of all time, and Jack Nicklaus, the greatest golfer of all time, turns out to be as wonderful in person and in private stories about his life and his wife and his kids and his grandkids and the things he's done. He's just authentically the golden bear. Do you have an opinion of Jack Nicklaus?
Oh, I love Jack Nicklaus. Like I said, I was raised watching the Masters, and we didn't watch every major tournament, but this one was important to us, and so I have some knowledge of golf lore, more than one might think, given that I'm terrible at golf and do not play.
Do you know what the gold that he's wearing the yellow shirt when he won the Masters in '86? You know why?
No, I don't know.
Because he had befriended a young 12-year-old with sarcoma. Who died from sarcoma, who told him that yellow was his lucky color. And the young man had died, but Jack was looking for something to wear on the morning. He was eighth. He was eighth on the board. And he wore that shirt, that yellow shirt, because of this young man with sarcoma. That's the kind of story that you don't get in the networks. It was really great.
There's a bunch of class acts in golf, and there's a bunch of great stories, and it's fun to watch the guys who were just pros at one point at a shop come up and be able to play in tournaments and become in the big leagues for that moment. So I will look forward to watching. It's nice.
Mary Katherine Ham, always a pleasure talking to you. Getting Hammered is the podcast you got to listen to. The happiest podcaster in America is Mary Katherine Ham. Bet you Dennis Prager is a Masters fan. When I see him next, I have to ask him that. Are you missing Dennis? We're hoping his recovery's going well. Here's a little bit of what you will hear at Pragertopia today.
The question is quite a simple one to pose, and that is this. If you could have God or fate determine this, which would you prefer? May I have a drum roll, please? A great marriage with no children, or a lousy marriage with great children?
Yeah, this is why we miss Dennis. It's a great question. Every day at Pragertopia, you can get your Prager fix. Become a Pragertopia member. Go to pragertopia.com. Let me also remind everyone out there that our friends at the American Legislative Exchange Council, and by friends I mean sponsor, they sponsor this show. They give me a State of the State report every day. They do a weekly newsletter that is free. All you have to do is sign up for it. ALEC.org/Hugh. ALEC.org/Hugh. For example, you read about today, price transparency for patients. ALEC stands for American Legislative Exchange Council. They work with the state legislators. There are thousands of people who belong to state legislators. Some of them work full-time. Some of them go to work full-time, like in California, to make a lot of money in pensions and turn out stupid laws. And some of them work 4 days a year. But they're all state legislators, and they all ought to belong to ALEC, because ALEC gets a lot of good stuff done. They have now come out with a model bit of legislation called the Hospital Price Transparency Model. SB 95 has been put forward in Michigan. Michigan. Going to do something good. That's unusual. You wouldn't know that. You know, what good comes out of Michigan except a few good lawyers? I don't know. But if you want to find out what good is going on in your state or any state, go and sign up for the ALEC Free Weekly Newsletter at alec.org/Hugh. ALEC.org/Hugh. And then come back. Secretary of State Marco Rubio making his he's been a guest on my show. How many times do you think he's been a guest on the show, Generalissimo? He's been on since 2010.
Probably 25, 30 times maybe.
No, more than that. I was more than once a year. I was going to say 100 times. But he's never not prepared. He's always very interesting. It's the first time I've talked to him since he went over to Foggy Bottom. So I hope he hasn't become clueless about all sorts of different things. But Marco Rubio coming up at the top of the hour. Do not miss that. And during the break, please, we're going to talk about El Salvador with Secretary Rubio, because that's where we sent a number of our deportees over the weekend. We are also helping El Salvador with Food for the Poor, their annual drive, Feed Their Future. $100 feeds a child in a new and safe El Salvador that is being fixed and being turned around, and you can help it get fixed faster by contributing to Food for the Poor. And you can go to HughHewitt.com and click on it, or you can simply call 855-359-4673. 855-359-4673. Coming up shortly, Secretary of State Rubio, we're standing by for him. He's running a couple minutes late. Let me use this opportunity. El Salvador did us a favor this weekend by taking some deportees who are very dangerous terrorists. We try and help El Salvador out every year with our Food for the Poor fund drive. And if you go over to HughHewitt.com, you'll see at the top there our Food for the Poor banner. It says Feed Their Future. $100 contribution during Lent will take care of the food needs of a child in El Salvador for an entire year. And I'd really appreciate if you'd make that your Lenten offering. If you're a Catholic person or if you're a Protestant person, you observe the season of Lent that we are in right now on the scriptural calendar, please be generous and give them a call. You can call old school, 855-359-4673, 855-359-4673. Or you can just go over to HughHewitt.com and donate directly with the banner at the top of the website. You can also text my name, Hewitt, Hewitt, to 51555. Joined now by Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Mr. Secretary, welcome back. It's good to have you. Congratulations on assuming the top at the 7th floor.
Thank you. It's I think we're starting our 10th week or our 9th week. I've lost count at this point, but a lot has happened in that period of time. But it's a great honor to be able to do this and to work for a president that I think is making history every day.
Well, Mr. Secretary, you've been on this program since 2010, and I think probably more than 100 times. And you may remember my basic worldview is that America's biggest adversary is China, People's Republic of China. The General Secretary Xi is a tough, ruthless man. He's in alliance with the fanatics in Iran, and they present a real and present danger with us. Do you share that worldview? Can a diplomat say that?
Well, I think it's certainly the biggest challenge we face. Look, here's the way I characterize it, because you're right. I mean, we need to have relations with these countries, but I think the story of the 21st century is going to be about what happened between the U.S. and China. I think I said this during my confirmation hearing. I think the Chinese believe that they are on a path towards becoming the most powerful nation on earth, that it's inevitable, it's just a matter of time. And they seek to manage that rise in a way that and avoid disruptions along the way if possible. And look, if in fact they end up out-competing us, out-innovating us, outworking us, what have you, that's one thing. But for us to sort of unilaterally allow them to do that rise while not playing by the same rules, then that would be on us. I think that's what's happened for the better part of 20 years. There was this assumption that some made that we should allow China to continue to cheat in rules of trade and commerce and intellectual property and that kind of thing. And if we let them do it, that eventually they'd become rich, and when they became rich, they'd become just like us. Well, that's not what happened. They became rich, but they're not just like us. So I would say they're a rich and powerful country. They're going to be a rich and powerful country. We need to engage with them because it's irresponsible not to. But we also don't want to live in a world where we depend on China.
Now, yesterday, the Wall Street Journal reported that General Secretary Xi is upset about the deal you made in Panama about the canal. And today it was announced that Hong Kong Enterprise is going to delay opening a car plant in Mexico in retaliation for the attempt to get the canal back. Do you care? Are we going to get the canal control back in American hands?
Yeah, look, we didn't give the canal to China, as the president says. President Trump's been very clear. We built that canal. We turned it over to, he didn't agree with that decision, but we turned it over to Panama. We wake up one day, and Chinese influence is all over the canal. They Hong Kong-based companies, which obviously have to respond to Chinese law, control all the key ports on both sides. The infrastructure deeply ingrained there. Benefited the Chinese, and that's just not sustainable, and they can't continue. We made our view very clear that we believe the treaty has been violated. We had a great visit. There's a lot of follow-up to be done, but the president's been abundantly clear about it, and that is that the Panama Canal cannot be an outpost for the Chinese because we built it, and we intend to have influence over it, and because we didn't turn it, like I said, we didn't turn it over to the Chinese. We turned it over to Panama, and that's not the way it's played out.
So it's obviously a flashpoint. Flashpoints are best discussed at a summit. Is there a summit in the offing between President Trump and General Secretary Xi, either here or there?
Well, I think that meeting is eventually going to happen. There isn't one scheduled. I think that time will come. Obviously, as you know, and you follow these things for a long time, and there needs to be a reason behind it. We have to know what they're meeting about and what the result of the meeting is going to be. But there's no doubt that will happen. The president has, in his first term, he'll do it again now. I mean, he'll meet with any foreign leader, basically, if there's a good reason to do so. I think that meeting will happen, but there's none scheduled at this moment.
Now, when the president talked to me, he was president-elect last in January, and we talked about Jimmy Lai, and he told me he would get Jimmy Lai out of jail. Have you had any conversations with your Chinese counterparts about getting Mr. Lai out of jail? Because he's going to die pretty soon unless we get him out of that Hong Kong prison.
Yeah, it's a priority. We've raised it in every possible forum, and they know that it's important to us. And I think there are other countries as well that are very involved in raising this issue, and that needs to happen. And we're going to continue to raise it. Obviously, with some of these things, we want to be careful what we say in the media. We don't want to jeopardize any efforts, but I think it's important to know that it's not something we've forgotten about, and it remains a priority. And I think that other countries around the world are making the same point as well to the Chinese.
Very good. Now, the Iranian fanatics sell a lot of oil to China. That's the connection. I want to move to the attack on the Houthis this weekend. First of all, have the Houthis attacked us, or are they just putting out press releases over the last 3 days? Because they put out a lot of press releases that they're shooting at the Truman, and I understood President Trump to say if they did that, the bombs would fall on Iran. What is the situation, Mr. Rubio?
Well, they say they attack. I mean, they launch and then they get shot down 100 miles away before it even is a threat. So DOD's had no problem defending. They're certainly not doing right now and what they were doing at the peak of this thing when they were attacking our Navy 150 times and global shipping 170 times. Maybe I got those numbers inverted, but nonetheless unacceptable. And, the one thing about President Trump is when he says things, he means it. And this effort is not a one-day thing. It's been going on now every night. It's been sustained, and it'll continue until they no longer have the capability to threaten not just the U.S. Navy, but global shipping. At the same time, the president's been clear. Iran is going to be held responsible for any assistance they continue to provide. The Houthis, the president had a post earlier this morning where he outlined that Iran is still helping the Houthis, maybe not as openly, maybe not as much as they were in the past, but they're openly helping them. but they're still helping them, and that's unacceptable, and that needs to change. So I won't get out ahead of the president other than to say I don't think I need to convince any of your listeners that when President Trump says something, he means it. Like,
well, you have been to the kingdom a couple of times. You deal with MBS and MBZ, and you deal with the Israelis. If it comes to blows, will we act in an alliance against Iran, do you think, or will we act alone?
Well, I think the president's been clear. He's prepared to do whatever it takes to prevent Iran from ever having a nuclear weapon. He's been abundantly clear. Now, he's a president that wants to promote peace. If you asked him, he would tell you he would much prefer to work this out diplomatically without a war, and that's his preference. That will always be his preference. But if you force him to choose between a nuclear Iran or taking action, the president's been clear he will take action. Whether other countries seek to join us in that endeavor or simply cheer us on, sometimes quietly from the sidelines, that's another matter. But it certainly will not determine the steps we take, because we view a world with Iran having, and the Ayatollahs, these religious fanatics having nuclear weapons. That's just not acceptable.
I agree. Do we have the weaponry necessary to destroy their sites where they're conducting the illegal development programs, Mr. Secretary?
Well, let me just say it on that, and that's probably a question better directed to DOD, but I'm confident enough to say that if the president makes the decision that we need to take action to prevent Iran from having a nuclear capability, we have the ability to do that and to go further and perhaps even threaten the regime. But look, again, I'm at the State Department, right? We promote peace, not war, but obviously the president's been clear that's what he prefers as well. So I always tell everybody I'd love to handle it through the State Department, but if we can't, then I have to turn these things over to Pete Hegseth over at the Department of Defense. And but we prefer to deal with it at the State Department, but you need a willing partner to do that.
Now, Mr. Secretary, I want to turn to the deportation flights. I'm on record as saying this is a case of first impression to my constitutional lawyer eyes. It's a non-justiciable political question. This judge should dismiss this case. And if they want to appeal to the D.C. Circuit, by all means, let him try, but he should punt because he shouldn't be telling us. That's my political opinion. Did you discuss with the president before the flights took off that we would have trouble with the courts as a result of this?
Well, we shouldn't have trouble with the courts. I mean, that developed in the middle of all this Yemen stuff going on at the same time on Saturday. So let me just back up for a second and say this. This is, to me, a conduct of foreign policy. We have a regime in Venezuela that absolutely refuses to take its nationals, and they have an obligation to take their nationals. So we had to make an arrangement with another country, El Salvador, and President Bukele, an arrangement that I made personally and followed up on again last week in conversations. And once those commitments were made, and they included, by the way, MS-13 criminals that he wanted to put on trial in his country for crimes committed in El Salvador, we had made a foreign policy commitment that we were going to keep. It is my view that judges do not have the right to conduct the foreign policy of the United States. Go beyond the immigration issues that people focus on. These are alien enemies in our country of an organized group undermining the national security of the United States, and that needed to be dealt with.
You're absolutely right.
International partner.
Let me pause here and give a signal to the stations down the road that I'm going to continue talking with Secretary Rubio and come back right away, so don't go anywhere. I'm talking with Secretary Rubio about the deportations. Now, Mr. Secretary, when you talked to President Bukele, did you make an agreement with? I'm going to talk to him during the breakout. When we had those conversations, did you receive any assurance from him that he would segregate the Venezuelan terrorists from the MS-13 gangs and the other prisons?
Well, we didn't have to make that agreement. We told him who we were going to send because the agreement is this. There's two different groups here. There are people that he wants because they committed crimes in El Salvador and they're in the United States, and we agreed to return them so he can put them on trial for and deal with their justice system on the crimes they committed. And then we have trained at Agua, organized gang members, and alien enemies inside the United States who are being housed by him in an excellent prison system that he has at a fraction of the cost of what it would cost to house them here in the United States. It is a matter that we've made. It's a foreign policy matter, and it's one that we weren't going to go back on because we make arrangements with foreign leaders. That's the conduct of foreign policy.
I agree. I think you're going to win that case going away. Here's my political concern, because I used to cover gangs in the prisons of L.A. quite a lot. If you mix them up, they kill each other. I don't want to deport terrorists to a place where they'll be killed by other terrorists. Are you confident that they will be protected from other terrorists or other gang members who are their rivals in the cartel business?
Well, ultimately, I can tell you that I have confidence that El Salvador runs an excellent prison system. That's why we engaged them on this process. They had capacity to assume them. They've done this before. You know, they wiped out the MS-13 gang in El Salvador in the way that they did it. So I think that my understanding as how they're going to handle it is he needs to handle them separately anyways, because the MS-13 guys that he's getting back are people that need to stand for justice for the crimes they committed in El Salvador. So that's a different process from the people we sent them, some of whom, frankly, are just alien enemies. So I don't know exactly how he's going to house them, but ultimately these are two separate tracks. They just happen to be as part of the same flight.
All right. Now Mr. Secretary, I want to go back to Israel for a moment. It is clear to me that some of our foreign adversaries are using the Internet to try and drive a wedge between Israel and the United States, and that anti-Semitic tropes are everywhere, and they're trying to split the indivisible alliance. I think they're the equal of any ally that we have. Have you seen that? Does it concern you? Do you think there's any danger to our alliance?
Well, I don't think there's any danger to our alliance. I think there's most certainly people out there that are pursuing these. Some are because they want the clicks, they want the followers, whatever it is may be that's driving it. I don't know who in specific, but I mean they're out there doing that. And then there are those, frankly, that hate Israel and hate the United States. And we've seen that engage itself and embed itself, for example, in what supposedly are supposed to be our elite universities in this country. And instead we have people on faculty and in the student body that are actively out there every single day, not just protesting against Israel, but committing acts of vandalism and violence and rioting and all kinds of disruptive behavior on this matter. So I think it's very disturbing to see that play out, because at its core, I believe, is anti-Semitism.
So it brings us to the deportation proceeding against Mr. Nahil, which again is a non-justiciable political question that you have the authority under 8-1227 to do. Do you expect to win that case and to deport other people like him?
Well, I do, and we are, and we're going to continue to do it. Bottom line is, if you told us that these are the things you were going to do when you came to the United States, we should never give you a visa. If this is what you do once you get into the United States on a visa, we're going to revoke your visa or whatever status you have, and we're going to kick you out of the country. We don't want those elements in our country. So not only have we done it, we're going to continue to do it. And we're going to improve the way we screen people for their visas, by the way. It's amazing some of these people ever got in here to begin with.
No, now, I've got one more question for you, Mr. Secretary. It's got to do with China. I want to finish where we began. China. Henry Kissinger said Mao did not believe in deterrence. Do you think General Secretary Xi Jinping believes in deterrence, and can we deter him from attacking Taiwan?
I think that's a tough question because it's so fundamental to his identity and to what he wants to be part of his legacy. I do think you can delay and deter by making the price of taking Taiwan higher than what he perceives to be the benefit. But let's be clear, they believe the benefits are definitional for he wants that to be the defining crown jewel of his time and power. So it's a very delicate situation there. Our policy remains the same. We do not believe that there should be any violent and or extortion-based change to status.
Yeah, the Shanghai Communique said 100 years before anything would happen, and it's been only 50 years. The TSCM president meeting with President Trump in the Roosevelt Room was a big deal. I mean, that was a very big deal. Is that a signal of our resolve to stand by Taiwan?
Our policy is the same as it's been. It's been consistent. We believe that the status of Taiwan should not be changed by force or by extortion or but compelled in any way. That's the policy of the United States. That remains the policy of the United States. That's been the policy of President Trump, and that will continue to be his policy. And when he makes policy decisions, he means them.
I will let you go with that. Secretary Rubio, keep coming back. Always a pleasure to talk with you. I appreciate your clarity and candor. Good luck in this very important mission that you're on.
Thank you.
I really do appreciate having Marco Rubio come on the show. I would guess 100 times. He's never not prepared. And he always answers the question. And he always answers the question. If he's not going to answer the question, he tells you, I'm not going to answer the question. I've told people for years, I've probably done 30,000 interviews now. There are two kinds of guests. Those you have to worry about and those you don't have to worry about. Those you don't have to worry about, they're comfortable, they're confident, they know who they are, they know what they want to say, they know what they believe, and they tell you. And that's Marco Rubio. It's also Donald Trump, who's the best interview in the world. And then there are people who are going to embarrass themselves repeatedly because they don't know what they believe and they're going to make a mistake. I'm satisfied that he's got an understanding with Bukele that they're going to keep the Venezuelan terrorists away from the only thing that worries me about this deal, the law does not worry me at all. It is clearly a non-justiciable political question committed to the foreign policy powers of the president, in my view. And I'll be amazed if that's not the result, because the presidents always win. Presidents always win. Dames and Moore, Youngstown Sheet and Tube, they didn't win there. Actually, that president didn't win, but he tried to take over American property, use of force abroad, deportation, things like that. They're not coming back. So the judge in D.C., give it up, friend. Just give it up. You're embarrassing yourself. You're embarrassing the courts. You're getting all sorts of fights started. We don't need that. And we're tired of a politicized Department of Justice, and we're tired of politicized judges. Back off. It's not your fight. And I heard what I need to hear from the Secretary of State. He talked to President Bukele about keeping these guys in a very safe place until Venezuela takes them back, which is where they need to go. Let me remind all of you as well that we have a great sponsor on this program that allows me to do fun interviews like that. I want to explain to you what I was trying to... actually, the Secretary of State knew what I was talking about. When you mix up gangs, they kill each other. So for many, many years, it has been constitutional to segregate prison populations by race. You may not know that. We're not allowed to segregate by race in any other institution, but it is constitutional to segregate people by race and indeed to segregate people by gang affiliation. And the reason is to make it safer for the prison guards and the prison community and those who are in prison and are not a member of a gang. They don't want fights and killings and things like that. Well, cartels are terrorists, and terrorists don't like each other. It's why, remember Zarqawi, the preeminent terrorist of Iraq, who would routinely blow up Shia shrines because he was a Sunni fundamentalist. So the Shia terrorists were killing the Sunni terrorists in Iraq throughout the aughts. And then the Shia terrorists in Iran did a deal with the Sunni terrorists in Gaza to not kill each other, and they would kill Jews. And that's a provisional alliance. They'll go back to killing each other as soon as they want. The fundamentalists, the terrorists in both groups. So you got two groups of terrorists. It's like Con Air, if you remember that old movie with Nicolas Cage. They got everybody, the worst people in the world on this airplane, and I just don't want them killing each other in the course of the flight or when they land, because that becomes a political problem for the president. And I'm glad to hear that the Secretary of State has talked with President Bukele about keeping them apart. You just got to keep the Venezuelans apart from the MS-13 people. That's good news. Other good news is that we have a great sponsor, Conservatives for Lower Health Care Costs. And they have put up a website called pharmawindfall.com that will teach you as much as you need to know about what Big Pharma is up to right now, which is they're trying to crawl back $32 billion in public funds for themselves, taking it away from other people who get money from the federal government, pharmacy benefit managers, others. And that will cost you money. It will cost me money. It'll cost everyone who gets their drugs through Part D money. We don't want that to happen. Now, I love Big Pharma. I always say that. They make great drugs. Whatever it is I'm taking that knocked out this bug, it's pink stuff. It's nothing special. We've been doing it for years. I think it's a generic, but it's an antibiotic. I'm glad we got antibiotics. I want them to keep making good drugs and stuff that people make that they need. But I don't want their lobbyists running Congress, and you can't turn a corner in the Congress without running into a couple of pharma lobbyists. I really did pick the line of work that's wrong, and the line of work that's right is to work for the best interest of the American people, and that's what Conservatives for Lower Health Care Costs do. You can find out all about that at pharmawindfall.com. Now, I want to explain to you as well that when we get someone like Marco Rubio, he's doing a radio day, or he's doing a television day or a media day, set aside an afternoon to talk to people. And they're always late. And we've learned how to deal with that over the years. But I didn't tell my new affiliates this happens sometimes. They say, you get 20 minutes. The secretary likes me. I've done these interviews for years. I like him. He's a Dolphins fan, so he's never won. But I'm a Browns fan, so I've never won. But the deal is they always run late. And when they run late, they give you your full time. So the next person runs late. So I think he's about 8 minutes late. So I got my full time, but I got to go to break in the middle of that. So I give you a signal, and I hope you heard it, and I hope you came back at the same time so that you weren't too confused by that. I should have asked him about being the acting archivist of the United States. I ran out of time because I'm sure you were all interested. You know that Marco Rubio is the acting archivist of the United States? Because once you're confirmed to an executive level 1, you can serve as an acting head of an executive level 2 concurrently. So President Trump fired the archivist who oversaw part of the weaponization of the archives and was partly innocent of the weaponization of the archives, and put in the director of the Nixon Library, Jim Byron, as a special government employee. I think he's the deputy director of the archives now. But Marco Rubio is the acting archivist of the United States. I think he's got quite a lot to do that he doesn't need to worry about that. Let me remind you, though, El Salvador is the beneficiary of this year's Food for the Poor fund drive. And if you will go over to hughhewitt.com, you'll find the Feed Their Future banner at the top. I keep bringing up, they're helping us out. They're doing us a favor. They really are doing us a favor, getting rid of these bad guys out of our country and housing them far, far away from the cartel brothers and sisters that they have in this country. Break up the networks, break up the fentanyl flow, break up the terrorism, break up Venezuela. At the same time, they got hungry kids. We don't want them joining gangs. We want them joining churches. I think every priest and most pastors in El Salvador support Food for the Poor. Won't you please consider doing so? The banner is at the top of hughhewitt.com, or you can text my name, Hewitt, to 51555, and they'll get you a donor link, HEWITT, to 51555, or call them at 855-359-4673. 855-359-4673. In the meantime, then, I will take phone calls, 1-800-520-1234, about what you heard in Secretary Rubio's voice about Iran, because Dwayne thinks he heard that the Iranians are going to run out of time. The breaking news out of Israel is that Israel has resumed combat operations, not just from the air, but ground troops into Gaza. And the Netzarim corridor, which is the corridor they built when the war began 17 and a half months ago, has been reoccupied by the Israeli Defense Forces, and they will move out and about. Meanwhile, they have scheduled a meeting to fire the Shin Bet chief, that's the head of the FBI there, for Thursday evening. So he will be fired on Thursday evening. There are protests in Jerusalem, but there are always protests in Jerusalem. But IDF forces are operating in Gaza. Defense Minister Katz warns of, quote, total destruction unless the hostages are returned. So the temperatures are rising around the world. I'm glad we have a cool head like Marco Rubio in that job. 1-800-520-1234. 1-800-520-1234. If you got to open the line. Thank you, Harley. If you have an opinion on what he had to say, I want to repeat again, because it's about the time that the judges start rolling out of the court building there, and the chief judge, all of you involved in these deportation cases, back off. You are in the president's field. This is national security. You have no idea what you're doing. You have no idea. You have no right to demand anything. He has a statute, it's a 1798 statute, but it's still a good statute. He's in the nines of the statute. That means he's in zone 1. All of his Article 2 authority plus a statute. Congress could have repealed that statute. Congress could have said you can't deport people. They have not done that. You have no standing. You're outside of your ball game. Back off, go away, leave the field, punt. And if the ACLU lawyers want to argue the case, they can appeal your dismissal as a non-justiciable political question, and they can take it up to the circuit. And the circuit can dismiss it, and then they can take it up to the Supreme Court, and they can dismiss it. That's the prudent thing to do. You don't see anyone suing to stop the president from bombing the Houthis, do you? No. Why not? Because he's acting within his Article 2 authority as the President of the United States and Commander-in-Chief of the military. He is acting in his Article 2 authority as Chief Executive of the executive branch, which runs all the deportees and all the people in the country illegally, including the terrorists and gangsters that he put on the plane, and they did a deal with El Salvador. I am very aware of the political risk involved in that deal, but I am not willing, and you should not be willing, to tolerate him doing that. Now, what if the court comes out and orders him to do something stupid? Laura Ingraham asked him that question last night, cut number 7. Cut number 7.
What would you say to that? Are there circumstances where you would defy a court order?
Well, I think that, number one, nobody's been through more courts than I have. I think nobody knows the courts any better than I have. I would say the chief judge does, but nobody knows them better than I have. And what they've done to me, I've had the worst judges. I've had crooked judges. I have judges that valued Mar-a-Lago at $18 million because that benefited his case, because he wanted to see me convicted of something. I have judges that had relatives making millions and millions of dollars on the election, ruling on the election.
But going forward,
I had judges
would
that
you
were
defy
so
a court
corrupt.
order? Because we all know that was outrageous.
I never did defy a court order.
And you wouldn't in the future?
No, you can't do that. However, we have bad judges. We have very bad judges.
The rule of law.
These are judges that shouldn't be
There's
allowed.
a very famous scene.
I think at a certain
in The
point
Man
you have to
for All
start
Seasons.
looking at what do you
I
do
believe
when
Paul
you
Scofield
have a
is
rogue
playing
judge.
Thomas More.
The judge that...
Cut number 17.
Arrest him.
For what?
He's dangerous.
For libel. He's a spy.
Father, that man's bad.
There's no law against that. There is God's law. Then God can arrest him.
While you talk, he's gone.
And go he should if he were the devil himself until he broke the law. So, now you give the devil benefit of law. Yes, what would you do? Cut a great road through the law to get after the devil? Yes. I'd cut down every law in England to do that. Oh? And when the last law was down and the devil turned round on you, where would you hide, Roper, the laws all being flat? This country is planted thick with laws from coast to coast, man's laws, not God's. And if you cut them down, and you're just the man to do it, do you really think you could stand upright in the winds that would blow then? Yes, I'd give the devil benefit of law for my own safety's sake.
That's the ultimate concise defense of the rule of law. And it's why I can at one point tell the judge with great confidence, this is not your ball game. You're in the wrong arena. Leave. And at the same time, say to the members of Congress who want to impeach him, no, we don't want to do it. We have a Constitution. We have a rule of law. We are a liberty-loving people. We believe in liberty. We love liberty. That's the way it should be. Wayne in St. Louis. How are you, Wayne?
I'm good, Hugh. Thank you for answering. I just have a simple question, and it begs a response. The question is, what is China doing in Central America? And then, you know, it goes with the understanding that that was our quick access to South Pacific and to the Middle East, and our peanut-brained president gave it back to the people of Panama.
I couldn't agree with you more. I opposed the Panama Canal Treaty at the time, but I was in college. No one really cared. Here's the deal. We're going to get control of those ports back, and we don't care what. But the risk is Taiwan. Understand, the most dangerous country in the world is China. The most ruthless dictator in the world is not Putin. It's Xi. Xi committed a genocide. Xi destroyed the rights of the people of Hong Kong. I will not go back to China because I might not leave China ever again. We are not friends with China, but he's a tough, ruthless man. Luckily, Donald Trump is just as tough. And we no longer have a regency in charge of the foreign policy of the United States, and we're taking action to deter China to raise the cost. Because they got problems. They got population problems, they got pollution problems, they got power problems, they got growth problems, they got all sorts of problems. Does he really want a war? International sanctions? I don't think so. I hope not. My phone number is 1-800-520-1234. One of our great sponsors is AndrewandTodd.com. They lend you money to buy a house no matter where you are, whether you're in New York or Florida, Washington State, or San Diego, anywhere in between. They play the four corners. I'm not sure they do Alaska. I should ask Andrew Del Rey and Todd Avakian if they do Alaska. I know they do Hawaii. They're lenders, Sierra Pacific Mortgage, and they've been my sponsor for more than a decade. And when I moved from California to the Beltway in 2016, they did my mortgage there. And they've done mortgage for Dwayne. They've done mortgage for everyone in Salem. They should do your mortgage. 888-888-1172. Now, I just saw the market is closed, and I wanted to see what the 10-year Treasury did after the Fed announced there are going to be 2 more rate cuts this year. Right, that's the breaking news this afternoon. So I wanted to go over and check on what the 10-year Treasury did. And the 10-year Treasury, of course, went up because it never correlates with the announcement. So the Fed said they're going to cut interest rates twice this year. And the U.S. 10-year goes up to 4.248%. However, interest rates will come down as the economy grows, especially when the tax bill gets passed. Hurry up, please, Congress. Get these interest rates lower so we can get the housing market going and growth back in the United States, coupled with deregulation. But you should not wait for the rate. You should wait for the house. When you find the house that you want to buy, you should go and get a loan and buy it. Andrew and Todd will lend you the money to do that. 888-888-1172. They underwrite their own loans. If you're a veteran, nothing down. If you're a first-time home buyer, FHB, the lower interest rate, but you got to have mortgage insurance. They do that for first-time home buyer. If you are a senior citizen, you want to get a home equity line of credit, HELOCs are back. Some people just want to have cash available, pay taxes, that sort of stuff. Go to andrewandtodd.com. They do it all. And the phones are ringing off the hooks, and they're going to keep ringing off the hook. Let me talk to Nancy in Montana. Hi, Nancy. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you, Mr. Hewitt. And I have two things here. Okay, our Constitution, the beauty of it is the separation of powers. The Obama-appointed judges seem to forget this. I believe that they are a threat, and I'm with you. I don't think that they have any right to interfere with our president and with our foreign affairs.
They do not, and they're going to get rebuked. It's just going to take a while. We don't need to impeach them. I don't want to start the impeachment merry-go-round because they're going to get the majority back in the House, and they're going to start impeaching our judges. And we just leave Article 3 alone. They're wrong sometimes. We just got to get used to it, and we will get used to it. But you don't want impeachment proceedings, do you, Nancy?
No, I do not. I would rather just save our Constitution, do everything we possibly can to do that. And I don't think it would have any effect on this judge because I think the guy, he has to be pretty cold-hearted to do what he just did. Well, but I want to ask, about Iran. I think Iran is just sleeping and they're just waiting for a command from China. I don't trust Iran, and I never will. Well,
you are well advised and well informed, Nancy. Stay alert. Grizzlies up there. You know there are grizzlies in Montana now because of the Endangered Species Act. So stay alert. Don't go out with the trash late at night. I'm joined by our expert on the Federal Reserve, John Campbell, longtime congressman from Southern California, member of the House Financial Services Committee. People may not remember, and certainly our new audience in the Hudson Valley. We got 3 new affiliates, John, in the Hudson Valley of New York will not know. You used to talk to Ben Bernanke fairly frequently. I'm not sure that you're buddies with Jerome Powell. Are you buddies with Jerome Powell?
I'm not. I don't know Mr. Powell. I did have generally a breakfast with Mr. Bernanke when he was chairman of the Federal Reserve about once a quarter because I was the chairman of the subcommittee that oversaw the Federal Reserve. So I know a little bit about this stuff.
So today, Mr. Powell comes out and says, we think it's a good time for us to wait for further clarity. Officials indicated that they expect inflation this year to rise to 2.7% from 2.5%. And for growth to be at 1.7% for the GDP. Now, I think they really have no idea what they're talking about because we don't know what the tax bill is going to do. What do you think?
Let me talk about a couple of things here. First of all, the Federal Reserve is in charge of monetary policy. They basically have 2 things they can do. One is they can raise or lower interest rates. And the other is they can either print money or take money out of the economy. So what did they do today? Today they said we're going to leave interest rates where they are. So and their next meeting is not until early May. So they meet about every 6 weeks. So they will. So that's what they did on that. But what they did do is back during the pandemic and after the pandemic, they printed trillions of dollars of cash, pumped all kinds of money into the economy, which is amongst the factors that led to the inflation that we had and to the increase in asset values, whether that's housing prices, real estate prices, stock prices, Bitcoin prices, whatever. It has led to that. They started taking some of that money out, in other words, reversing the printing press, about 1.5 years ago. And what they essentially did today, which was covered a little bit, but not that much, the only real decision they made was they were taking money out of the economy, reversing the printing press, but doing it for a year and a half. Today, they essentially stopped that. They're going to take a little bit out, $5 billion a month, which in the case of a 10, $15 trillion balance sheet, whatever it is not very much. So they've essentially decided, they must be worried about liquidity out there. So they've decided not to do that. But so they won't be taking money out.
Whoa. That worries me. Aren't you the guy that voted for the bailout because the liquidity machine locked up like rigor mortis?
Correct. That's correct. If liquidity does that, that's a problem. And
so are we really worried about liquidity? I mean, you got to explain to it. We got Steelers fans listening, and we have UFC people. What does liquidity mean?
Things get bought and sold out there in bonds, in the market, houses, etc. And to buy and sell stuff, you need cash to buy and sell stuff and move it around. And if that cash is not available, you don't have liquidity. Liquidity means there's not enough cash to do that, and things freeze up. So you want to sell something.
And people have no idea. All night long, all day long, 24/7, 365, money is moving. And that's good. And if money stops moving, that's very bad. It's like a heart attack, right?
And that's what happened in September of 2008. You had some of the biggest companies in America could not sell their bonds for 24 hours. I mean, they were going to say, I want to borrow money for 24 hours because we just bought some inventory or whatever. Biggest companies in America, and nobody would lend them the money because there wasn't any, and everybody was fearful and so forth.
And that's when John stopped being a conservative. Really? That's when John voted for the bailout.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Why do I do this show? Why do I subject myself?
I got a new affiliate.
Abuse?
I got to make sure they realize that my guests know what they're talking about.
Anyway. Okay. Well, I don't think they're really worried about liquidity, but I think what you can see by today is if you say, are they worried about the economy collapsing? Are they worried about inflation going up? Or are they worried about liquidity? Of the three, liquidity is probably the one that makes them the most nervous right now, it seems, but I don't think that it's a big deal. And I'm not going to, I mean, people in your new affiliates will all go to sleep if I explain why they might have a little concern about liquidity. But it's
not a big concern. You're not worried.
It's not a big concern. I'm not worried at this time, but I think what the Fed is saying is, we're watching out there. Maybe there's something on the horizon.
So tell me what you think. I talked to Marco Rubio last hour.
Yep.
And I said to him, so Xi Jinping is our number one enemy. And he's mad about the fact that we're getting the canal back under American control. And so he's not going to build a car plant in Mexico, which I think is a setup for an invasion of Taiwan. That takes a long time to explain to the Yinzers, but I'll do it someday. What do you think? What do you make of what Xi is doing, not building a car plant and getting mad about the canal? Are we frustrating his world domination?
We are. I think that's correct. And what the point of building the car plant in Mexico was simply to be able to bring Chinese products through into the U.S. without the tariffs on China. And what China has done on so many products, so many things. If you think you're being green and you get solar cells, those solar cells are built in China. 100% of them worldwide are built in China. How did that happen? Well, what happened is they built them. The Chinese government subsidized the product. They put everybody else in the world out of business, and then they raised the price. It's called dumping. It's not new. It's been done for 100 years between countries, but we let China do it. We, the West, not just the U.S., let China do this on rare earth minerals, on solar cells, on a whole bunch of stuff, and they want to do it on cars. I mean, they have an EV they're selling in parts of the world for like $20,000, whereas the cheapest electric vehicle in that country made by somebody else is like $40,000 or $50,000. So what is it going to do? It's going to put that domestic auto industry out of business. And that's what he wants to do. He wants to put our defense out of business. He wants to put our auto industry out of business. He wants us building nothing and dependent on them, because then guess what? They can just walk in. They don't.
Now, I want to state a proposition. You're actually a serious guy on the economy. I want your reaction. I think the tariffs on China are wonderful, 35%. I believe we can endure the pain, and they cannot. I think they have terrible demographic problems. They have terrible growth problems, that they have 90% groundwater pollution problems, that they've been terrible stewards of their people and their country because they're communists. And we're going to win if we do smart stuff like the 35% tariff. What do you think?
I agree completely. And what we have to do is not allow them to dominate, to own all the production of certain products, whether that's pharmaceuticals that they do or the rare earth minerals, which go into virtually every technology product and a lot of defense products, or automobiles or solar cells or batteries or anything else. And so, yes, I'm 100% behind this. And Hugh, you and I both were neocons years ago.
Yep.
And what we believed was that if we let China enter the world market in terms of trade, and that they would experience the prosperity that comes with world trade, and that communism would thereby fall. And that was what we thought. We were wrong. And it's something, by the way, the Democrats never admit, but we as adults need to do this.
Yeah,
sometimes
if you read Kissinger's book on China, we weren't alone. Everybody thought that the world would change China. Instead, China looted the world.
No, that's right. We were just wrong. We did not think that they could have this kind of prosperity from exporting all their products and have communism stand, but it did. And so now that whole idea is dead. It's gone. It failed. And so we need to do something else. And the thing we need to do is, I agree with 35% tariff. I believe that now, I think someone told me that we have a 100% tariff on Chinese electric vehicles. And
I'm good with that.
We should, because
and on their pharmaceuticals and on their PPP. Anything that we need, we should not buy from them.
I completely agree. If I can for a minute, let me just circle back to the Fed for just a second before we run out of time. There's one point I wanted to make. So we talked about what the Fed did today. The Fed is considerably less important than it was. And, okay, they do monetary policy, and I explained. Fiscal policy is what Congress and the president do. And they basically have two levers they can pull. They can increase spending or reduce it, and they can increase taxes or reduce them. And those are the things that they do. Right now, we are in a period of what you call fiscal dominance, which means the Federal Reserve will do what the Federal Reserve is going to do. But if the Trump administration and Congress comes in and cuts taxes and extends the tax cuts permanently or whatever they're going to do, and they cut spending and they do all the things they're doing, what the Fed does matters a whole lot less, because that fiscal policy, what Congress and the president are doing, is going to have a much greater impact on the economy than what the Fed does. So
from your lips to the ears of the Senate, get moving. Get the tax bill done. I really, every time a day goes by and nothing's happened, I think, we do not have a lot of time here. It's not because of Democrats, it's because of China. John Campbell, follow him on X at Look Through Chaos, LOOKTHRU Chaos, Look Through Chaos. With Sean Hannity last night, and he had a couple of great things to say. Cut number 12, Elon Musk.
I think they're getting desperate because, the reason we're seeing this extreme amount of hatred and violence is because we're actually succeeding in getting rid of corruption and waste. If we weren't succeeding in getting rid of corruption and waste, they wouldn't care. But we are succeeding.
I don't think he's right. Elon Musk is a brilliant genius engineer. He does not understand the political left in world history. And I don't know that he's ever studied it. The left in world history hates productive people who cannot be controlled. He is one of the most productive people I've ever followed. I did not read the biography of him. I'm not an engineering guy. I just marvel at what he's accomplished and think his brain is a giant brain, like Peter Thiel and Mark Zuckerberg. The engineers have different brains than lawyers do and journalists. But he doesn't understand the left. It's not because of what they're doing. It's because they're not doing it. The left wants to be in charge. And when someone goes over and scratches a Cybertruck with a swastika, hey, it's a display of stupidity. It really is. Just tattoo stupid on that person's forehead. The last kind of person that was allowed to be in the Führer's Germany was an Elon Musk entrepreneur. They all worked for the state. He didn't work for the state. He worked for himself. Number two, the only person I know who owns a Tesla is a Navy SEAL. So I hope you don't pick that one. Literally, I know one person. I'm never buying an electric car. I'm not going to do it. Wouldn't be prudent. Technology is beyond my grasp. I'm too old to change. I don't want to learn. I'm a grumpy gas guy. But he makes the best electric vehicles. So if the electric vehicles are, the green people don't have a movement. They really are. They've lost the nuclear power people. We need nuclear power if we want to be green. And they're not doing that. I just have to tell you, I believe fundamentally the green people have lost their minds because they've lost all their allies, because they figured out their allies aren't really green. Their allies were about power. They're leftists. They have been leftists forever. And if you study intellectual history, best guy at this is Chris Rufo, the left's long march through our institutions, and works for the Manhattan Institute. And you go back from Marx forward, the men and women of the left are nihilists. They don't believe in anything except power. And their power, they merge, they come full circle, and they run right into the right-wing fascists. I'm with the liberty people. I'm with the freedom and rule of law people. That's why you listen to this program. We're the freedom and the rule of law people on the Hugh Hewitt Show. So you'll hear me say that judge is completely wrong, and no, we don't want to talk about impeachment. Is that not radical? I'm not a radical. We're not right-wing radicals here. We're conservatarians. We are constitutionalists. And that's why I'm opening up the lines. 1-800-520-1234. Why do they hate Elon Musk so much? 1-800-520-1234. I'm in the Relief Factor studio, by the way. I'm a capitalist as well. I'm not NPR. I get no government subsidy. I have to get sponsors to come and be on the show with me, like our wonderful new sponsor who does Medicare. And I don't have his name in front of me. I don't want to give out. It's hashtag 250 as for Medicare shares. Hashtag 250 Medicare shares. Big Data is coming in, going to destroy the archaic Medicare system, make it efficient, effective for you. I went out and recruited them to be a sponsor. I do that. I don't wait for sales reps to make calls. Relief Factor has been a sponsor for 10 years. I use their product. I love their product. You're happy to listen to me if you're my new affiliates that joined after Dan Bongino went in to become the deputy director. A bunch of affiliates moved around, and they've got some people that they want to put in there, but they decided, nah, they're going to put me there, or they're going to put somebody else there, but they wanted me. So I got a bunch of new affiliates around the country, and they don't know anything about Relief Factor. I've been taking it for, 12 years, 13 years. I am a trundler. That means I run, walk. I used to be a runner. Actually, I used to be a racer. My PR isn't great, but it's a 3:12 marathon. That's not bad. I've been running marathons since I was 22. And half marathons, scores of them, 10Ks. But I'm older and I'm slower, and now I trundle. Trundling is anything between 10 and 15 minutes a mile. If you're over 15 minutes a mile, you're walking. And I'm in favor of walking. I'm uncoordinated as can be. You don't want to be in any athletic event with me. I'm going to be the last guy picked for the team, and that's okay. God distributes gifts randomly. For example, I didn't get a producer. Everyone else in the business gets a producer. I didn't get a producer. I got Dwayne. So it's an unequal distribution of gifts. But one of the gifts I got was Relief Factor. So I can do 13 miles on a weekend. I haven't done it in 3 weeks, but I can do 13 miles on a weekend and not feel bad at all because Relief Factor works. Call them. 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief. Believe me, I take it every day in the first hour on the air. You can watch on the Salem News Channel. 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief. Or go to their website. Find the starter pack for $19.95. Order it, 3-week supply. Try it. You'll thank me. ReliefFactor.com. Now, my phone number, I don't give it out enough. 1-800-520-1234. 1-800-520-1234. Why do they hate Elon Musk? Well, there's a little bit of envy going on here, too. Here's cut number 13. Mr. Musk was Fox last night.
No, we definitely offered to return the astronauts earlier. There's no question about that. The astronauts were only supposed to be there for 8 days, and they've been there for almost 10 months. So obviously that doesn't make any sense. SpaceX could have brought the astronauts back after a few months at most, and we made that offer to the Biden administration. It was rejected for political reasons, and that's just a fact.
It is a fact. And Elon Musk is doing us a favor, and he's shaking things up. Donald Trump was talking about the attacks on Tesla last night with Laura Ingraham. Cut number one.
So Elon is a patriot. And again, I hardly knew Elon until the, election. And he turned out that he liked me better than he liked these radical lunatics that were in it, better than Kamala, better than Joe, because he's an intelligent person. He backed me, and he went, and he got very much involved. He actually would go around saying, if Trump doesn't win, our country is over.
But do you consider this an act of domestic terrorism?
I think so.
Why?
I think that if and when they catch the people, and I hope they do, the good thing is they have a lot of cameras in those places, and they've caught some already having to do with that.
It's domestic terrorism,
I think
and they're going to jail. Ellie in Santa Rosa. Hi, Ellie. You're on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Hi, Hugh.
Hello.
Hi.
Well, you got to go ahead.
Hello?
It's radio.
Yes. What can the Trump administration do about these judges if not impeachment and
appeal? Appeal,
yeah,
nominate, appeal and nominate. The one thing I would like to see is they wanted to expand the Supreme Court to 14. I think we ought to bring that bill back up. Now, I wouldn't vote for it, but I think we ought to get them on the record. All you can do, the Supreme Court is an originalist court. All we got to do is hire lawyers and bring lawsuits. And some people are impatient because the leftists are very aggressive, but you don't impeach for being wrong. You just reverse. And we own most of the circuits, and we own the Supreme Court. So we're going to win in the end. Don't worry about it. Beginning today, I get to call Sarah Bedford a colleague because I began writing a twice-monthly column for the Washington Examiner today. So hello, colleague Sarah Bedford. How are you?
Hi, congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a national security column. It'll come out twice a month. I started by talking about the Iranians and the fact that we've been at war with them for 46 years. I just got done talking with Marco Rubio about that. Do you think President Trump's going to attack Iran?
Well, he's certainly escalating things in the Middle East by launching the strikes on the Houthis and issuing, stronger and stronger warnings to Iran. I don't know that, Washington sees that as in the immediate offing, but so he's certainly signaling that he's much more serious about containing Iran's influence in the Middle East than his predecessor.
I got the sense from Rubio that the Iranians are still helping the Houthis. We're still hitting the Houthis, and time is running out on the Iranians. So I'm on a different clock from that. Also talked with him about a sensitive issue. And I want to know if you've heard anything about this. The deportations that we did on Saturday. It was Secretary Rubio who negotiated with President Bukele, and he agreed to take the Venezuelans. Would there be political downside if the Venezuelans disappeared? Because you send gangsters to a different gang, cartels don't get along very well.
Yeah, politically for Donald Trump, I think no matter what happens in the courts, it's a political winner for Donald Trump to be getting Venezuelan gang members out of the country. No voter, Democrat, or maybe except for the most hardcore progressive voter, probably wants to see those Venezuelan gang members remain in this country, remain in communities. So I think that Donald Trump would suffer very little political blowback. Right now, I think his DOJ is really bending over backwards to comply with this judge who is really, if any of the sides are really pushing this closer and closer to what Democrats keep calling a constitutional crisis, I think it's pretty clear it's this DC district judge.
It's not a crisis. It's going to work out. I mean, he's going to lose on appeal. What's he going to do? It's a non-justiciable political question. I don't want to bore the audience again with this, but I mean, what do you think? You're a journalist. What can he do? Order him to bring them back?
That's what he tried to do on Saturday, right? He was like, turn this plane around, bring it back to wherever you took off from. I think it's the most absurd example of what we've seen from district judges, but we've seen it all over the map on everything from funding to USAID to, Elon Musk trying to get access to computer systems to perform some audits. there are a lot of judges who are really pushing the boundaries of Article 3 power here. And, Donald Trump is getting more and more aggressive, at least rhetorically.
Yeah, but it's not a crisis because they can't make him do anything, and they're going to get reversed by the Supreme Court. But what I think what happened on Saturday night, he was lazy, he was sloppy, he assumed that the lawyers could read their mind, he did not issue a written order. Has anyone pointed out that he just did a terrible job of judging if he really wanted the plane back? It was terrible.
I mean, it depends by anyone. If you mean the mainstream media, no, I don't think that is part of the story that's being told here. It's being framed, like I said earlier, is Donald Trump being the one who's pushing the boundaries of the constitutional system here, not this judge who ordered, a military plane that was the result of diplomatic negotiations to be turned around midair over international waters, and then is now holding up getting to the merits of the case because he keeps demanding answers as to what happened with that airplane instead of taking a look at the legal issues.
That's because first rule of holes. You probably had a young reporter that you've been an editor for, and they don't know how to stop making the same mistake, so they make the mistake 3 times. What do you do with him, Sarah? So he should punt. You eventually fire him, or I don't want impeachment. I think that's all silly and a waste of time. I agree with the Chief Justice. We ought not to politicize the courts that way. But this guy really is making a buffoon out of himself.
Yeah, and I think the appellate courts, or maybe even eventually the Supreme Court, is going to make that determination that this ruling was gravely in error. I mean, so there's 2 things that need to happen with all of these Donald Trump cases, right? The merits of the cases need to get adjudicated by the higher courts. And Donald Trump's likely to win on a lot of those cases, but also the Supreme Court is eventually going to have to address the judicial tools that these lower district courts are using right now, the preliminary injunctions, the temporary restraining orders, the actual procedural way that the left has been able to stymie Trump's agenda here. That's also going to get, I think, examined by the Supreme Court.
Yeah, the nationwide injunction problem is particularly acute. And, I like to tell people, it's not an Obama judge thing. The worst ruling thus far came from the octogenarian Reagan judge up in Washington State, who said of the president's order conferring birthright citizenship that it was wildly unconstitutional. That's wildly wrong. It's a case of first impression. So it can't be wildly unconstitutional when there's nothing. It's just an opinion dressed up in a robe. I respect the judiciary, I respect the rule of law, but they got to stop doing this. Sarah C. Bedford, my colleague, good to see you. Follow her on X at Sarah C. Bedford. Follow me in the next segment, America. I'll get back to your phone calls at 1-800-520-1234. I'm reading something. I cannot even believe it. I try and keep you up to speed with breaking news. So I just posted this on my X account. If you're new to the program, I'm just at Hugh Hewitt. I have a YouTube channel. I would really welcome you to subscribe to it. And you'll have pop up on your feed the interviews that I think are important, like Secretary Rubio and Leo Terrell and Mary Katherine Ham. And I've got a website, HughHewitt.com. And Dwayne faithfully transcribes interviews that are newsmakers. And Secretary Rubio made some news today, letting us know the details of his negotiations with the El Salvadorian president, the situation with China right now, the situation with Iran. And we talked about the effort that is ongoing to try and split Israel from the United States, and it's not going to work. But I say I'm a big Zionist. I'm not a Jew. I'm just a Zionist. I believe in Israel. And there are big demonstrations in Tel Aviv tonight because the war has been renewed in Gaza. And families of the hostages did not want that to happen. They're afraid for their 22 living hostages. I understand that. But I don't have an opinion on whether it was smart or not to start the war. It's not my country, and there's only one American there, and Netanyahu has the information, and they know what they're doing. And I think he's run a pretty good war for 17 months. They also announced that they're going to fire the head of their FBI. It's called Shin Bet, and they're going to fire him tomorrow night, so they're mad about that. So the leader of the protesters, a guy named Moshe Radman, he hates Netanyahu. I don't know much about Israeli politics, but I know that he hates it. He made a speech tonight outside of Netanyahu's house. Quote, "We got through Haman. We got through Pharaoh. We got through the British Mandate. We got through Hitler. We'll get through them too." I just don't think you ought to compare Bibi Netanyahu to Hitler and Pharaoh. I do tell you, the left is crazy. That's the crazy Israeli left. And Israel is the craziest place. I'm not Jewish. I've only been there a couple of times. I follow it because they're our ally. They're our strategic ally. They're our most important ally in the world. And we got other nuclear powers that are our allies, like Britain and France, but they wouldn't do anything with their nukes unless we told them to and okayed it and acted in concert. Israel might. They are the most innovative. Google bought an Israeli tech company yesterday for $32 gazillion, more than they've ever paid for any company ever, because Israel's a startup nation. You want to be on Israel's side. And Netanyahu's run that country for 17 years. He's Democrat, right? He's not a fascist. He wins. The left can't win because Israel is becoming more and more conservative because they've had it with the crazy stuff, just like America. Trump and Netanyahu, they're two sides of the same coin, tough cookies. But now Elon Musk is figuring out the left just hates. They just hate. Kevin in Minnesota cold. How are you, Kevin?
Not too cold, about mid-30s. So
okay, that's not cold.
Nothing. No. And I've got a sense of humor, but I have stayed at a Holiday Inn, or what is it?
That's better than the guy from Euclid. We're never letting anyone from Euclid call the show again.
He was unhappy.
He was.
But he also demonstrates what you just said. The left is nuts. And you ask why they hate Elon. They hate Elon because he's with Trump. They didn't hate him before then.
I know, but it's the craziest thing. TDS is a powerful drug. Whew, it's a powerful drug.
Their brains are broken.
And they know that they're out of power for a while. Hey, thank you, Kevin. Bobby in Detroit. Sorry about your Lions, Bobby. Not really.
Oh, come on. Just be a little bit sorry. I think that...
No, I'm not. I'm not sorry at all. No. They haven't been to a Super Bowl. I don't want them to get to the Super Bowl before the Browns do. You know, the Browns...
Yeah, that's what I thought. You were a Browns fan.
Yeah. I don't want them to get there before I do. That's the bottom line. And you're from that state up north, so I don't care what happens to your teams anyway.
Go Blue!
No, you're lucky I didn't throw you off. But you want to talk about Elon, so go ahead.
Well, I mean, it's really clear, like you said, it's Trump derangement syndrome. The only reason that they hate Elon now is because he's supporting Trump. And if you support Trump in any way, shape, or form, they will come at you with everything they have, including the media, who supports...
Well, the media doesn't bother me. This is domestic terrorism. They're going to get someone killed. And I want arrests tonight. I want the Bureau. I'll bet you Kash Patel sitting around with Dan Bongino, and they have a task force, and they've said, you know what, we're not going to go bother the traditional Latin Rite Catholics. Let's go find the terrorists who are blowing up the Teslas. That's what I think they're doing at the FBI tonight. Thank you, my friend. Neil, Pittsburgh, how are you?
Good. Pittsburgh fan. I've listened to you a lot.
Have you learned anything about football yet? Have you become a Browns fan?
Yeah, I like the old-time Browns. I grew up in the 70s, and I like that.
Do you want Aaron Rodgers to be your quarterback?
Yeah, I'd take that.
No,
yeah,
I mean, that guy's way too goofy for Pittsburgh. He's the least Yinzer quarterback ever.
Well, that's true. Yeah. I like Kenny Pickett.
Well, we got Kenny Pickett, the Browns, and we're going to sign Carson Wentz. I read today. The Browns quarterback room is going to be Shedeur Sanders, Kenny Pickett, and Carson Wentz. I guess the Watson trade worked out really well.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I'm sure you're going to watch the college hoops.
Oh no, I'm not really. All that means to me is that the Masters are coming. I'm not a college hoop guy. I'll watch the Final Four. I went to a Sweet 16 once when the Buckeyes were in it, and they got beat by the. They have the funniest team out in Wichita State. I can't remember their nickname. The Shockers, yeah. So all these people with these shocks of wheat, and I said I am in the wrong place. I thought I was at a basketball game. So anyway, Neil, you got a minute.
Okay. Well, about Elon Musk, my brother, I have one brother, he says all these people ought to get 20 years. I think they ought to get 1 year, but then it's just a little 6x9 room with a cot, no internet, no HBO, no Showtime, no TV, because people are so used to entertainment.
Oh, I'm with that. I don't want solitary confinement. I want no electronics, but I want more than a year. You start blowing up cars, you're risking it's domestic terrorism. And domestic terrorism, I lived this as a kid. I remember the SDS stuff when I was in grade school. The bombs start going off. No, we're not going back to the summer of George Floyd. Not again. Not going to happen again. Trump's not going to put up with it. We got a real FBI. Kash Patel is going to do a good job at it. I want him to find these people and put them away real quick. I've got to listen to a couple of podcasts after the program today. Dan Senor has a new edition of Call Me Back Up with a right-wing Israeli and a left-wing Israeli. But it will have been overtaken by events because the IDF went into Gaza today on the ground, retook the Netzarim corridor, and they're going to crush Hamas. They're not going to stop. And the only way Hamas is going to survive is if they give those 22 people up under a white flag and get on a boat and go to Tehran. And the Houthis aren't going to survive unless they stop. There's Donald Trump. This is not the Biden Regency. That's the bottom line. Don in Los Angeles. Go ahead, Don.
Hugh, welcome back to Days.
Oh, I'm glad. Oh, it's old Don from L.A. days.
Yeah, I'm so glad when I couldn't believe my happy ears when I found you were coming back on Days. Welcome.
Well, you know, I miss drive time in the East is considered the most important slot in radio, and I understand why, because you influence Washington D.C. people driving to work, but they got to drive home from work. So now I talk to them when they're driving home from work. So I'm just happy to be. I've been in the West Coast for so long. I'm glad to have. The show is on most places noon to 3 on the West Coast, and taped late a few places later than that. So it's good to have you back, Don.
Thank you. You know, I really enjoyed your interview with Marco Rubio. I'm a big fan of Rubio, but he's got his work cut out for him. You know, I wish Mr. Trump's policy towards Ukraine and Russia were a lot more like his policy towards Israel.
Do you notice that I did not bring up Ukraine and Russia? You know why?
Yeah, I know. You're a diplomat.
Well, because I can't. He's not going to tell me anything. There's a very sensitive negotiation going on between. It's a three-way deal: Trump, Zelensky, and Putin. I'm sure Rubio is advising, and so you got 20 minutes with the Secretary of State of the United States. I don't ask stupid questions. I want to know about China, and I want that interview to be read in China. And he's not going to tell me. He told me stuff about China, and the people in China are going to read that, and they're going to say, "Wow, these folks are onto us."
Yeah. I think it's just a tough situation. We've always been on the side of freedom. You know,
we're not going to abandon Ukraine. That's why I pay no attention to the statements. Trump is setting up a deal to try and stop the killing with acceptable lines because he knows, and that will buy 45 months for Ukraine because Putin didn't invade when Trump was there the first time. Last minute to you, Don.
Yeah, as long as they use those months to build up Ukraine's military to resist the next attack, because Putin isn't going to change his spots. Once a KGB, always a KGB, man.
I agree. I agree. But I'm not going to ask Rubio that because he can't say that.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, it's like he was very diplomatic about Xi, but at the same time he agreed with me. I like that part. Don, thank you. Good to be back. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Harley. Thank you, Generalissimo. Generalissimo did 2 transcripts today. The Leo Terrell. We're going to see a cutoff of funds to either Harvard, Michigan, or UCLA. I think it's Harvard. Dwayne thinks it's going to be UCLA. And the Rubio transcript's going to be read overnight in Beijing because he's on to them, and we know that. Let Jimmy Lai go, Mr. G. Let him go. I'll be back tomorrow. In the meantime, if you missed anything, go to my YouTube channel, like and subscribe if you wish to opine.